Hello and welcome to my channel. I decided to start a new series on here where I wanted to show how easy and painless it is to start learning programming. And I thought I would film one on Codecademy where I'm doing one of their courses. When I signed in to see what I could do, I found they have a Welcome to Codecademy course. And we do at least a bit in JavaScript, so I thought I'm gonna film this and we'll see how it goes. Start. I just want to make this video. Obviously, if you actually want to learn to code, it's not going to be by watching my channel, it's going to be by taking classes, or it's going to be by trying it on your own. So I'm not saying that this video is going to teach you to code, but I wanted to make a video to encourage people to use sites like this to learn to code, or to get better, or to not give up if they get stuck. That's all I wanted. Welcome to Codecademy. Are you ready to start coding? Hang on. It's connected to Codecademy. We have the output on this side and the code over here, the instructions over here. Alright. Codecademy is all about learning by doing and coding. By doing and by coding. In this lesson, we'll take you through the basics of how to use Codecademy and show you some of the power of learning to code. The section below this text contains instructions about what to do and how to proceed to the next exercise. Instructions. The center panel contains a code file which is running in the browser panel on the right. Move your mouse cursor over the letters in the browser panel to animate them. Click Next button when you are ready to dive in and start coding. Well, that's interesting. Okay, well, not explain that. Oh, that's run. Okay, yeah, next. Okay, write some code. The code in the editor panel is written in a programming language known as JavaScript, but that detail isn't too important right now. It's time to start writing your own code. When you run the code in this exercise, we'll run some tests to make sure that you've added or changed the code correctly. If something's not right, you'll see an error message at the bottom of the code editor. If everything is good, you'll be able to move on. Change the text between the single quotation marks to your name and click the Run button. Okay, so here's the single quotation marks. My name, I'm going to use my channel name, and click Run. It changed, and it still does bounce bubbles. Alright, so there are things that you can do. If you do want to understand how bounce bubbles works, but they'll get into that when you take the JavaScript course. And, I mean, it's just about trying things. If I were to, let's say I, by mistake, took out what do you call it, and run? The app wouldn't run, but I still have the next button, so once you do it right, they don't take off points, basically, for you to do it wrong. Okay, alright, click next. Okay, good. Changing variables. Now you'll use a variable to quickly change your program. Variables are used to store some kind of data in a program that can be referenced elsewhere, often more than once. Variables look different in different programming languages. In the code editor, there's a line that looks like this. So we have that on line 2. This line creates a message variable and stores the change the message text in it. Later in the program, message is used to reference that text inside drawName, meaning that the message text appears on the screen. And so some of their top questions are, now if empty lines are okay to have. Our goal is to change the text stored in the single quotes stored in the message variable from change the message to a new message. So, I'm not here to explain how variables work because I am terrible at explanations. I'm just here to show that if you want to start learning programming, some of these courses are a really good way to start, They try to make it fun and interesting. They try to explain things. They have this community forum on Codecademy. So just try stuff and see what happens. And I'm not a very creative person either. So we click run. And all I did is change what's in message. Message gets used on draw name. It draws the name, and then bounce bubbles runs so that when I move the mouse, all the bubbles move. Okay. Changing colors. Okay, time to make this animation more interesting. In the code editor, draw name now has 2 items between the parentheses, message and red. The text in the browser panel also has turned red. Draw name is a set of repeatable code that we've defined elsewhere called a function. We can call the function or ask the program to run that code and pass in different values to see different responses. You already did this when you changed the value of the variables that you used to call drawName. When you call drawName with 2 different values, you can set the message and the display color. In addition to red, we've defined variables that represent other colors for you to use. So our goal is to change the second value in drawName from red to one of the other variable color names defined in the code editor. Okay, so we can use any of the colors that they list here. So I'm going to do orange. So I'd like to see what that looks like. And if I were very bored, I can try each of the different colors, and I can also change some of these. So let's say I wanted to change this to a 70 and then run. And I can't tell a difference, those were too close together. But I just wanted to see what I could do. And that's one thing you get on here is you can play around with the code and see, well, what happens if I change this? Or, if you're worried about blank lines, take out a blank line and run the code and see what happens. Add in a few extra blank lines and run the code and see what happens. Multiple colors. The text is now displayed in multiple colors. There is a new variable named letter colors with a list of color variables inside brackets separated by commas. Letter colors. The displayed text in the browser panel will cycle through the values in letter colors in order when drawName is called with letter colors. Ah, I see. Alright, learning to code is all about experimentation. Definitely. Trying out new code and observing the result. As you experiment, you may want to reset your code to the starting state. This can be done with the reset button at the bottom of the code editor. Oh, nice, okay. Yeah, they gave me an error message because I hadn't done anything. I just wanted to show you what happens. So the question is, how do the numbers relate to which color is generated? RGB, red, that's the value of red on a scale of 0 to, I don't remember what the highest value is. That's green, and then that's blue. And when you take 280 red, 50 green, and 60 blue, you get purple, or this shade of purple. Okay. Each color is represented by 3 numbers between the brackets. Try changing numbers, running your code, and observing the result. You can always reset your code if you don't like the result. That's another thing you get in these is if you try something and you're like, well, what happens if I change this to 150, which I think is double, and you try it. Where were we? I want to see what it looked like before. I forgot to pay attention. Like how in the last exercise, I had changed a number, but we come to this exercise, and that is actually the goal of this exercise, to change a number. Oh, so I like my green better. And that's the red value, so I'm adding more red or taking more red away. I'm adding more red, yeah, right? As you add more red, it changes what it looks like. Alright. Change physics. Part of the power of coding is that small changes can create big impacts. Now that you've experimented with changing the color and text, it's time to experiment with the animation itself. Oh, so we have steps. Okay, I wanted to show the community forum. How can I think like a programmer? What programming language should I choose? What's some essential advice for new coders? So I want to try to answer these the best I can, just because I'm here doing this video. How do I think like a programmer? There's things about used logic, there's experimentation. Honestly, if you get interested in this stuff, I think thinking like a programmer just comes to you. There's something that I picked up fairly early on, where I now say in real life, in conversations, if this happens, then this will happen. I use the word then in an if statement, and it came from Visual Basic. Really. Sometimes it sounds a little weird. That is something that I picked up that maybe you want to try to avoid. What programming language should I choose? There's different reasons to choose different languages. JavaScript is generally a good one to start with. That's why this one is using JavaScript. That's why Codecademy uses JavaScript. And that's why so many of these teaching websites have JavaScript at least as one of the options, if not the main option. It's a good learning language. One thing that I'll say is when you start on one language and you're starting to understand it a bit, maybe you still have a lot of questions, switch over to a different language and it sort of reinforces the concepts that you've been learning, because while it's written a lot different, maybe another language doesn't use semicolons, maybe in another language you'd have to put a word before you can start on this line. There's all kinds of things that would be different. But you start to learn the concept better because you're getting the experience with multiple languages. Some essential advice, so that was, I think, good advice for new coders. Another thing that I would say is if you struggle with something, that doesn't mean that you're not a good programmer or that you should give up. I think that you should keep trying. Maybe it's time to switch to a different language. Maybe it's time to try the same language on with a different teacher, through a different course, through a book instead of a website. Just find a way to try something different if you're really stuck and everything you're doing isn't working. I'm not saying give up on the program you are working on. I'm saying if this is explaining a concept and you're really not understanding that concept, even when you can pass the specific courses, then it may be time to try something else. Okay, enough of my nonsense. Our goal here is 3 variables let you experiment with the animation physics. Mouse response threshold, so that's this one, line 10. Friction is line 13. And rotation force, which is line 16. Mouse response threshold affects how close the mouse pointer needs to be to affect the dots that make up the letters. The larger the number, the more powerful the effect of the mouse interaction. Experiment with changing this value to different numbers and running your code. Okay, so I'm not great at... I have some actual reading problems, so I have no idea really what it was saying. But it wants us to change this to different values. Once we make a change, we have to hit run so that our code is in here. So is that actually different? Let me see. Where was it before? Was it at 50? Let's try 20 and see. You know, I like 20 better. Change your code, so friction... Oh. It wants me to move on to step 2 because I finished step 1. Alright, I like 20, I'm sticking with that. Try experimenting with the friction value. You'll probably want to keep friction between 0 and 1. 0 and 1, so What was friction? This variable controls how strongly the dots will try to return to their starting position. Okay, so let's see if I do 45. That's quite a bit different. Oh, wow, the higher number makes them really want to come back to the center, right? If I go with 95. Yeah, because they keep moving. Where with the lower numbers, they just sort of go away from the cursor and stay there. Well, that's interesting. Finally, try experimenting with the rotation force value. This variable represents how much each animated dot will try to rotate when interacting with the mouse. Try keeping this value small, maybe around 0.01. This variable controls how much the dots will rotate when interacting. Rotate? Okay, so it said try 0.01. I really don't. I want to see what happens if I do 0.02. Oh, wow. Oh, okay. We don't want to break the system, so I'm going to hit next. Welcome to Codecademy. Onward. Congratulations. You're ready to take on your next Codecademy lesson. Instructions. Congrats. Okay. What path should I choose? How long does it take to learn to code? What are some other essential things I should know about coding before I get too deep into it? So, number 3, I don't have an answer for. And number 1, again, it's up to, if you have specific goals, you may want to lean toward a certain language. But otherwise, I mean, I say JavaScript is a good one to start with. I like Python to start with. I like any of the, well, that's basically it. How long does it take to learn to code? So the basics, people learn at different speeds, so I can't say it takes one person a certain amount of time. It took me 3 languages and multiple years to actually have a very clear understanding of the basics and what certain things mean. The basics meaning input, output. What we got is output when our message displayed, and output in the way that the dots moved. We did not do any input. We had variables in there. We never had any conditionals. And there were some functions, but we're not anywhere near that far, so we didn't really learn them. We just had to use them. After that, it kind of depends on the language that you're learning. There's object-oriented. If you're in most object-oriented languages, then after that, there's advanced topics. After you get to advanced topics, and you're really understanding some of that stuff, there's more general concepts like design patterns, which are ways to use object-oriented concepts. So you can learn to code for years, decades, even if you learn the basics in an hour. So I hope you enjoyed this and have fun. Yay! Okay.